Stephen A. Smith Show coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio. 250-plus markets across the United States of America, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM, Channel 80, plus ESPN Radio simulcast over the live national television airwaves of ESPN News. Number to call up, as always, is 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Lots of stuff to get into. Playoff weekend is here. The New England Patriots will be hosting the Los Angeles Chargers. In the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs will be hosting the Indianapolis Colts tomorrow. Sunday, the Philadelphia Eagles, the reigning defending Super Bowl champions, will be visiting the New Orleans Saints, the number one seed in the AFC. And, of course, the Dallas Cowboys tomorrow night will be visiting Los Angeles, where they're scheduled to go up against the Los Angeles Rams. I got news for you. I think Dallas could win this game. Are you ready for that? Don't faint. I actually think the Dallas Cowboys have a pretty damn good chance of winning this game. The Los Angeles Rams lead the NFL in surrendering 5.1 yards per rush. They've been highly suspect against the run. If you run the football, then Aaron Donald doesn't get to just salivate at the mouth at an opportunity to get all over Dak Prescott. Questionable as to whether or not Ndamukong Suh will show up. So when you look at it from that perspective, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, feed Ezekiel Elliott the football all day, every day. Now, having said all of that, because it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. Having said all of that, ain't no way in hell I'm picking the Cowboys. Because what can go wrong will go wrong. They'll find a way, damn it. Now, preferably, I actually think it would be nice for them to win and then get ramrodded by New Orleans, who I believe are going to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. But if Sean McVay and these boys show up and handle their business at LA Coliseum tomorrow night in LA, a game in which I will be at, all you Cowboy fans, you disgusting, nauseating fan base that you are, yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there, Lord willing. I'm trying to get there. A lot depends on the pilot and the airlines, but my intent is to be there. I'm telling you right now, I would listen. As long as whatever makes the Cowboy fan most miserable is fine with me. But in all seriousness, Cowboys can beat this Rams team. And the reason why I bring that up is because it transitions me to Sean McVay. Sean McVay, the golden boy of coaches in the National Football League. Let me be very, very clear. I love Sean McVay. I think he's an exceptional coach. I think he seems like a great guy. He's married to football. He's on top of his game. He knows what he's doing. He's resurrected this Rams franchise. I've had the pleasure of meeting a few people that work within the Rams organization. Bunch of great people there. And I'm really genuinely rooting for the Rams to have some success. And I ain't going to lie, there's nothing wrong with being in Southern California. But I will say this. If Sean McVay loses this game, it will be the second year in a row he has guided this team to the postseason with an impressive regular season run, only to fail to win a single playoff game. So do I think there's some pressure on Sean McVay? You're damn right I do. But I'll tell you somebody else. And I'll tell you folks who are the folks that should feel the most pressure. In the event that the Rams lose this game, and it has anything to do with insufficiencies on the part of its head coach, it should be all these damn owners who bought into all of these offensive minds when it comes to the head coaching circle throughout the National Football League. The Johnsons with the Jets choosing Adam Gase. The Arizona Cardinals with Cliff Kingsbury with a K. Tampa Bay to a lesser degree with Bruce Arians because he's proven. Green Bay with Matt LaFleur. I'm not going to even call him LaFleur, John. Matt LaFleur. LaFleur. What did you do with the Titans that you deserve the privilege of coaching Aaron Rodgers? So I gave you 4 right there, and now we got a 5th one coming down the pike because if the reports are anyway truthful, if there's any veracity to the reports, haven't you heard the news, ladies and gentlemen? Zach Taylor, the quarterback's coach for the Los Angeles Rams under Sean McVay, is about to get the job as the head coach for the Cincinnati Bengals. So you had 8 openings. You're going to have 7 jobs filled if this is true, not one single minority. All white dudes. Nobody's debating Vic Fangio. He deserves it. Nobody's debating Bruce Arians. He deserved it. But now we go on the route of Zach Taylor, a quarterback's coach under McVay in L.A., along with Kingsbury, Gase, and his mediocre record, LaFleur in Green Bay, and let me not forget Mr. Fred Kitchens in Cleveland, because he worked for 5 minutes with Baker Mayfield, and now he's the second coming. Now, my man Louis Riddick, NFL insider and analyst extraordinaire, particularly when it comes to NFL front offices, made a very adroit and an astute point when he highlighted the fact that you got a lot of these guys that have a history and a reputation of working with quarterbacks. And because they had a history of working with quarterbacks, that's the umbilical cord that the owners and league executives have used to justify hiring all of these guys as head coaches. My question would be this. I know Eric Bieniemy for the Kansas City Chiefs ain't calling plays, but this black man that's the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs happens to be the offensive coordinator for the number 1 ranked offense in the entire National Football League. Number 1 in yards. Number 1 in points. Number 3 passing attack. Excuse me, ain't that working with a quarterback? Look at me when I'm talking to you, John. Even though he ain't calling the plays, is Eric Bieniemy not working with the quarterback? If you're the offensive coordinator, you working with the quarterback, how come he didn't get the job? How come he didn't get the job? I mean, this stuff sticks to the high heavens. Nancy Amore for the USA Today, presumably piggybacking off of me, but maybe she didn't, astutely pointed out the disgraceful situation that's been taking place in terms of minority coaches not getting hired. But it's amazing to me the excuses. And somebody said this too. When it comes to some of these white candidates, you know something? You look for an excuse to give them the job. When it comes to minorities, you're looking for the first reason for them to lose their jobs or to not give them a job. Double standards, inequality, all the things that we lament in our society today. Don't look to Capitol Hill. Don't look to the president. Don't look to people like that talking about what's going on in our country. Look at the NFL. This happening right here in sports. At least politics has the backdrop of always being about politics, nepotism, and who you know, and glad handing, and gerrymandering, and all other names you could come up with. Corruption or whatever you want to call it. It's always been synonymous with politics. Last time I checked, sports was supposed to be a meritocracy. The proverbial glass ceiling was supposed to be eradicated before our very eyes. Well, how's that working out? Y'all are so full of it. But I digress. First order of business that the Rams got to win this game. And I'm hoping they don't let me down and they handle their business against the Cowboys. I'm hoping that Todd Gurley is healthy and ready to go. I'm hoping that Aaron Donald resembles the stud that he is. I'm hoping that the APB that was put out for Ndamukong Suh, who's a very nice guy, by the way. He actually gets a bad rap as a person because he's actually a nice guy. But Ndamukong Suh has got to show up. Aqib Talib, I got nothing but faith in this brother. He's going to show up. Marcus Peters, I'm not so sure, but I hope you do. Aqib Talib seems to have a positive effect. And by the way, while we're talking about Sean McVay and why I say more pressure should be on Sean McVay, I'm going to tell you why. Because as much as Jared Goff has looked bad over the last month or so, don't get me started with his performance against the Bears a few weeks back. Guess what? Even when he was playing great, Sean McVay was getting credit. So guess what? If McVay don't show up tomorrow night, I'm going to look at McVay. I'm sorry, if Goff doesn't show up tomorrow night, I'm going to look at McVay. And you know why else I'm going to look at McVay? Because Wade Phillips is your defensive coordinator. One of the elite defensive minds in all of football. Well, why the hell do you have the 20th ranked defense? You got to keep Talib, Marcus Peters. You got Ndamukong Suh. You acquired all of them in the offseason. You still got Aaron Donald there. You got Fowler from Jacksonville. What's the problem? Figure it out. Figure it out. And Wade Phillips is familiar with Jason Garrett and what Jason Garrett likes to do. Wade Phillips is a former Cowboy coach. The fact that he's there should be a problem for the Cowboys. It shouldn't be a reason for them to salivate at the mouth. He should be disrupting their plans. It shouldn't be the other way around. So Wade Phillips has to show up too. And since Sean McVay hired him, it's another reason to look at Sean McVay. Now I believe in Sean. And I like Sean. And Sean is safe. Sean is one of the young stud coaches this game has seen. And he's a big culprit as to why these young, no-name, unproductive dudes have been getting jobs. Because everybody's trying to find the next Sean McVay. So I'm paying attention to all of that. I hope you are too. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. This is one of the things that I wanted to get into. There's a couple of other things that are worth getting into, by the way. Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. I'm actually picking against them this weekend. I think the Chargers are going to take them. Gronkowski's health is a question mark. Edelman hasn't been the same. Josh Gordon is gone. I do not believe Tom Brady has fallen off a cliff. I do not believe that Tom Brady can't get the job done, but I do believe no matter how good you throw the ball, there are people who have to go out there and make plays for you like they customarily did throughout their careers. And the fact is the New England Patriots compared to these Chargers, led by Derwin James and the crew and Joey Bosa and the crew and Ingram and the crew. Let me tell you something right now. The Los Angeles Chargers are no joke. And I'm going to give them love and respect where it's due. And Anthony Lynn is doing an outstanding job. A minority coach, by the way, doing an outstanding job. Since everybody wants to ignore the 65% winning percentage that Mike Tomlin has in Pittsburgh, let me tell you another guy. Anthony Lynn is doing a great job. And Phillip Rivers, who's missed the playoffs 7 of their last 8 years, he's due, some would say. The Chargers, top to bottom, talent-wise, are a better team. They should not lose this game, even though Phillip Rivers is 0 for 7 against the Patriots. They should not lose this game. And if they lose this game, shame on them. Because New England's not better than them. I know it's in Foxborough. I know it's against Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. I know the Patriots are going to be ready because they had a bye week and they're rested and healthy. I get all of that. The Los Angeles Chargers should be ready for this. Period. And I think that's something that's important to say. Kansas City, that's my biggest worry. Because the Chiefs and this horrid, pathetic defense, everybody want to talk about they can't stop the run. They can't stop the run. You know what? The Kansas City Chiefs can't stop a cold. They couldn't stop a cold. They couldn't stop the sniffles. Even if they gave them some Sudafed decongestant, some Mucinex, whatever the hell it is. Advil, it don't matter. Motrin don't matter. Ibuprofen don't matter. They couldn't stop a damn thing. Their defense stinks. But offensively, they're legit. The problem is they haven't been the same since Kareem Hunt has stepped away. And so it's going to be really interesting to see what transpires in that regard, because I'm looking at the Kansas City Chiefs and I'm looking at this kid, Patrick Mahomes, and obviously he's my league MVP. Once upon a time, I thought it was Drew Brees. But Drew Brees, after that beatdown at the hands of Dallas, hasn't been the same, at least until the last week of the season. Actually, he didn't play the last week of the season, so I apologize about that. But he wasn't the same from that point forward. I'm just looking at them right now. Patrick Mahomes, 5,000 yards passing, 66% completions, 50 touchdowns, and just 12 interceptions. A QBR of 82, sacked just 26 times in 16 games. So he's been protected for the most part. Unfortunately, Kareem Hunt is gone, and we all know why. And so as a result of that, Damian Williams, Spencer Ware filled in. Damian Williams is filled in nice, averaging better than 5 yards a carry. I think the Chiefs have to run the football effectively. I think they got to work to keep the ball out of Andrew Luck's hands. I think that they need to put up points. The Chiefs will need to score at least 35 to win this game. I'm going to pick them to do it, but with strong trepidation. If there's a team that's a road team that could easily win this week, it is the Indianapolis Colts, because Andrew Luck, Marlon Mack, T.Y. Hilton, and those boys are big time. And Eric Ebron was the biggest pickup in the offseason, some could argue. And getting back to the NFC, look, my apologies to the Philadelphia Eagles for not giving them any chance against Chicago. I thought the weather was going to be atrocious, and as a result, that defense in that city with the talent that they had in the running game, I never trusted Trubisky, but I thought, hey, the Eagles probably with Nick Foles would lose this game. They proved me wrong. That defense showed up. I never dreamed that their defense would look that good. Props to the Eagles, but it ends now. It's been a nice run. Want to congratulate Nick Foles. I mean, I'm not going to sit up there and just fawn all over him the way some of y'all do. I mean, the way they talked about Nick Foles, married man, a beautiful father and kids, and worships the Lord so religiously and blah, blah, blah. I mean, you got the impression that, he touched you on your shoulders and you too could be healed. I mean, people was treating him like the second coming. You got to be kidding me. Nick Foles, a Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP, deserves our respect. I think he should be a starting quarterback in this league. I don't think he's better than Carson Wentz. I don't think he did anything last week against Chicago that Carson Wentz would not have done. But it ends now. It doesn't matter. Now you get ready to go up against the Saints in the Superdome in New Orleans. Now, you're not going to get blown out 48-7 like last time. But this is a different animal altogether. I could see this game ending like 38-20, 38-21 in favor of New Orleans. It ain't going to be quite the 48-7 blowout that you witnessed a few weeks back, but I can't see the Eagles winning this game. I'd be shocked. Wouldn't that be something, though, if the Eagles and the Cowboys won and then the NFC Championship game was back in Dallas with Philadelphia visiting them? That would be something to behold. But I don't think it's coming to that. At least one of these teams are going to lose, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be Philadelphia. So I just thought I needed to say that. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. One other item I wanted to get into, because I get annoyed at some of these things. The Antonio Brown saga in Pittsburgh. We know the story. Bolted out of practice last week of the season for their game against Cincinnati. Said, I'm out of here. Couldn't be reached by the coaches for a day or two. Was told that he would not play Sunday's game against the Cincinnati Bengals in the season finale because he hadn't shown up for final walkthroughs or anything like that. And showed up at the game in a fur coat, not team attire or anything like that, a fur coat or whatever the case may be. And, he's been a headache and, not the ideal team player, all this other stuff they've been saying about Antonio Brown. And you have to be a fool not to recognize that it really comes down to his relationship with Big Ben Roethlisberger. He doesn't feel he has much of one. But having said all of that, when the Steelers president Art Rooney II comes out and says it's hard to envision that Antonio Brown will be with the team next season, he said just letting him go is off. That's not going to happen. But trading him certainly is an option or whatever. I find this appalling. Ladies and gentlemen, production matters. For the last 6 years, Antonio Brown has had a minimum of 101 receptions a season. He's had a minimum of either 1237 or 1287. I forgot what the number was. But he's got one or the other when it comes to his level of production per season in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. Antonio Brown is arguably the greatest receiver in the game today. Without question. He's had a minimum of 1,284 yards over the last 6 seasons. 1,499 in 2013, 1,698 in 2014, 1,834 in 2015, 1,284 in 2016, 1,533 in 2017, 1,297 in 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, these are elite numbers. Now, I understand that they have another number one in Juju Smith-Schuster. And I understand the notion that in some people's eyes, sometimes more, less is more. I don't believe that here. Antonio Brown is under contract through 2020. I'm not letting him go. Forget the cap hit of $21.9 million, all this other stuff. This brother is an elite player and an elite receiver. I am not losing Antonio Brown. Figure it out. I'm not absolving him. I'm not saying he didn't do anything wrong. I'm not saying he's not a headache. I'm not saying that to some degree, look, listen, he's not cancerous. But guess what? You may not have found a cure for cancer, but there's a lot of things going on. Research continues to develop. Chemotherapy, radiation, and beyond. And I'm not joking about those things. Obviously, one has nothing to do with the other, but that's a highly sensitive subject to me because we know I lost my mother to that. God rest her wonderful soul. What I am saying is let's be clear about something. This notion that because somebody is a headache, get rid of them. I'm saying when you're that elite, figure it out. Let me tell you something that Antonio Brown don't want to do. Antonio Brown does not want to sit home. He ain't going to sit home and miss out on his money. He's going to play. And if he's going to play, he's going to want to be elite because he's not going to want his cachet to fall off. He's universally recognized as one of the elite players at wide receiver in this game. He's universally recognized as one of the hardest workers. Figure it out. He ain't getting along with Ben Roethlisberger. Make them get along. He's not listening to authoritative figures. Make it in his best interest to do that. He does not have to smile in your face, have Thanksgiving dinner with you, go shop Christmas gifts with you, and all of that other stuff. He just has to play. This notion that everybody's got to be best friends and get along in order to produce results is nonsense. He's Antonio Brown. Now, I'm not saying you don't trade it for nothing, mind you. I mean, if somebody knocks on the Steelers' door tomorrow and offers them 3 or 4 first-round picks, or the Atlanta Falcons call with 2 first-round picks and Julio Jones, or if the Giants called and said, we'll give you Odell Beckham Jr. for Antonio Brown and a first-round pick or something, I can understand you listening to that. But short of the spectacular offer, there is nothing to talk about. He's Antonio Brown. He's freaking Antonio Brown. Figure it out. That was Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage in America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. By the way, gentlemen, stop lounging around. Be active. Take your girl out. Go to a game or a concert. Get tickets to something. Plus, the playoffs are upon us, and the time is now to jump on those tickets. For all your ticket needs, look no further than Vivid Seats, the official ticket partner of ESPN. Go to vividseats.com and enter promo code ESPN to get 10% off your first order, please. Get out. Go have an experience, fellas. Get to the game and use what I use. That's Vivid Seats. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. We'll get to your phone calls eventually, but not before we talk to my man, Louis Riddick. He's up next, NFL Insider Extraordinaire with yours truly, right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News.
Craving even more of Stephen A?
Him of all
people. For around-the-clock access to the man,
I'm Stephen A.
You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Stephen A. Smith and on Facebook at Stephen A.
Now, lo and behold, you listen to Adam Gates. It's Adam Gaze, I'm sorry. And you know what he's saying, right? What you looking at me for? It's about injuries. It's about injuries. That's all it's about. It's about injuries. That's what he's saying. Frank Gore got injured. Albert Wilson got injured. Hakeem Grant got injured. Josh Sitton got injured. A.J. Derby got injured. I get it. Ryan Tannehill wasn't healthy the entire season. I get it. Adam Gase even made a case for himself, pointing out how they were 3-0 until the injuries happened. Last time I checked, injuries were a part of football. Last time I checked, it wasn't an excuse for anybody else. So I don't want to come across, and I want to be careful here, because I'm not trying to come across by saying Adam Gase can't coach. Adam Gase doesn't deserve a job. I'm trying to say it's New York. It's the Jets. New Yorkers have been starving for something to be hopeful about and enthused about for quite some time. When Rex Ryan first arrived on the scene, it was back-to-back AFC Championship games. When Bill Parcells arrived on the scene, it was a trip to the AFC Championship game. Outside of that, Herm Edwards took you to the playoffs a couple of times. But you knew they weren't going to do anything. If Vernie Testaverde doesn't go down, forcing my man Keyshawn Johnson to slam his hands on a podium, damn it, after telling the world he wanted the damn ball because he was looking forward to Testaverde getting him the ball, and then suddenly he gets hurt and the season's a wash, and Super Bowl aspirations go down the drain. I mean, last time I checked, injuries are always a part of it. So what you do is you have a guy here that you have now brought in who has said, look, if it wasn't for injuries, I'd have been fine. The problem is injuries happen every week in the NFL. So if that's what he's saying, what hope is there? That the Jets go get on the field and suddenly they ain't gonna have any injuries? This is the reason that New York Jets fans should be excited. Really? Really? I mean, this is unbelievable.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed.
And tough and all that stuff. You can dance and prance till you huff and puff. There's just no way you can get enough of me. Yo, Mr. Big Stuff. Louis Riddick wouldn't know anything about that. I don't know if he would know anything about that. That's some old school heavy D stuff right there. But I think he would know. Louis Riddick's on the line with me right now, NFL analyst extraordinaire. What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Hey, remember, I'm almost as old as you, so
that's
I know
true.
that.
That's true. That's true. That's true. No doubt about it. Let's get right into it, Louis Riddick. First things first, we got 4 games. Dallas, L.A., Philly, New Orleans, New England, Chargers, Kansas City, Indy. What's the most intriguing game for you?
The most intriguing for sure is Indianapolis at Kansas City because, you know, Indianapolis is one of those teams that people have kind of left for dead at the beginning, the first quarter of the season, the first half of the season. But because of how they're built, they're so strong down the middle, such strong play from the offensive line, strong play at quarterback, strong play from Darius Leonard at linebacker on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, they've got tremendous character, tremendous team speed now, and they're very, very physical. Going up against a team that doesn't play very good defense, that isn't really one of the best all-around teams in the NFL, but they have a quarterback that is just basically taking the NFL by storm. And it's one of those where, and we talked about this earlier today, it's one of those where there's going to be a lot of pressure on that team, that being the Chiefs, being at home, being coached by Andy Reid, being a franchise that hasn't had a lot of success in the playoffs, and being coached by a coach who, after all this time, as much as he's respected, man, he just has not been able to get to the Super Bowl and win it. So I think that's the one where there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot at stake for the Chiefs to leave to lose at home as the number one seed would just be catastrophic to this season, given everything that Patrick's done. And then the Colts could be like that Cinderella football team. Could the Colts, after being left for dead, actually make it to the Super Bowl if they were able to pull this game off? I say they could.
Louis Riddick right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio. By the way, ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, protecting commercial vehicles and offering specialized coverages designed to protect your business. More at ProgressiveCommercial.com. Louis, when you talk about the Indianapolis Colts, I see that offensive line and the manner in which they protect Andrew Luck, and I think I think these boys are monsters. They are no joke. I'll tell you somebody else that I think needs to be protected this weekend. I think it's Jared Goff. I mean, when you got DeMarcus Lawrence and the crew scheduled to come after him, this is in Los Angeles. They don't have home field advantage, even though the game is in L.A., because Dallas Cowboy fans travel. And if there was ever a place to travel with no problem, it would be Southern California. You know, everybody's looking to go out there. What are your thoughts about that game?
Yeah, that's one. I'm picking the Cowboys in that game. I think that game is set up for for an upset.
You just did that, but you just did that to upset me. You did it to upset me. You did it to upset me, Louis.
So you know when you put aside your disdain for the Cowboy Nation, you can see it. You can see it on the horizon that they could definitely pull this off. And quite honestly, it wouldn't surprise you. Why? Because defensively they play a high pressure, high intensity style defense, and by that I mean they're up in your face, man. This team does not back off of you at all. They run to the ball as hard and as fast in unison as any defense in the NFL. That's the way Chris Richard demands it. That's the way Rod Marinelli demands it. And some of the matchups on the front seven really favor them when you're talking about Dallas' defense versus the Rams' offense. Watch the Rams' offensive right side of the offensive line. It's a problem. Watch their right tackle, Rob Havenstein, versus DeMarcus Lawrence, the left defensive end for the Cowboys. That favors the Cowboys all day long. One of the last times that we saw Jared Goff play, and you know how much I respect him, how much I respect Sean McVay. Right. His eyes were as wide as UFOs looking at the Philadelphia Eagles front seven led by Fletcher Cox and Michael Bennett come after him and get pressure off of that right side. Fletcher tore them apart. Michael Bennett tore them apart, and Jared had no time, looked totally rattled, unnerved, and I'm telling you, I would not be shocked to see the same thing happen in this game.
So what do you expect more? For Jared Goff not to show up, or for Dak Prescott, along with Jason Garrett and Scott Linehan, to have some problems?
Interesting. I would expect Jared to have a tougher time because of the style of defense that Dallas plays. Dak is Aaron's going to lay hands on Dak at some point, Aaron Donald. He'll get him at some point. But I think overall, that defense for the Rams is just so unpredictable in terms of how hard and how consistent they play. They just are. And I think the best way to treat a defense like that and make sure you put them on their heels is to go downhill right at them and continue to pound them, and then take opportunistic shots over the top. That's how every team has frustrated and gotten after this defense, and that's how Dallas can play. So if they stay true to their identity, that being Dallas's offense, being a run-first offense, play-action pass, use Dak on the zone read now and then, make sure the threat of him being a runner is something that the Rams don't forget, particularly down in the red area, this is going to be a problematic game for the Rams.
So how much of a chance, considering that, and I know that you picked the Cowboys. Let's go to the Eagles and the Saints, because how much of a chance are you giving the reigning defending Super Bowl champions to go into New Orleans and pull off that upset?
I'm going to give them a chance simply because their DNA, which is something I believe in with all sports teams, is that of a champion. They know that everyone is counting them out. They know that people like myself poke holes in their team and say that the secondary is suspect, regardless of the fact that they're playing better right now than they have, in the first three quarters of the season. They know that I'm saying that they don't have a real strong, consistent running game. They do it by committee. They know that I say that even at linebacker, they don't have the star power some other teams have, but still they play great team complementary football. So I always give them a shot. The problem is you're coming into the home of a Saints team that is well-rested, a fan base that is anxious to get out there and party like no other fan base can in terms of how they celebrate a football game. Mm-hmm. You're talking about one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time in Drew Brees, one of the great play callers of all time in Sean Payton, two of the best running backs in the NFL. They complement each other perfectly. One of the best offensive lines in the league, period, in the Saints offensive line. And a defense for the Saints that's been basically carrying this football team for the better part of the past month as the offense has started to struggle.
Real quick answer from you. What are your expectations of Patrick Mahomes in this game? This is his first year quarterback in this team. What do you expect from him, his first playoff game?
I expect Pat to play like he's always played. He's never let that team down as far as being able or producing spectacular plays and giving them a chance to win. I expect no different from that.
Louis Riddick right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Last question for you, or actually second to last question. Your thoughts about the Antonio Brown situation in Pittsburgh? I know you're familiar with what's going on.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those where obviously ownership has sent a clear message as to where they stand as far as how they feel he's conducted himself and what they feel is best for their football team going forward. When ownership comes out and talks, you know it's pretty much a done deal. Pittsburgh Steelers ownership is not an ownership group or an ownership family that would put their foot in their mouth and kind of, reverse course and say, you know what, we changed our mind. They seem very deliberate and very precise in terms of their thinking when they go public and start talking about something. And for them to say what they've said, as far as not being willing to just cut him, but they don't foresee any scenario where he'd be back on the football team, I think the writing's on the wall. Someone will get a great player, and Antonio Brown, no question about it.
Last question to you, Louis Riddick. You obviously do an outstanding job for us. We're proud to have you here. And by the way, great job all year long on Monday Night Football as well. We appreciate it. But you're also somebody who's so cerebral and so thorough in your thinking that some would argue you should have been the general manager for the New York Giants instead of Gettleman. You've watched what's transpired over the last week or so. You see no minorities getting hired for head coaching positions, and you know the numbers. League 70% black in players, only 2 black head coaches, 1 black GM, no black owners, no black president of football operations, anything like that. Your thoughts real quick.
Yeah, there aren't enough minority coaches in the pipeline, Stephen A., at the critical positions, those being quarterback coach, offensive coordinator, that team ownership is looking for right now to bring up to the head coaching level when they're looking to hire new people. There just aren't enough minorities in the pipeline. There just aren't. They're being directed to coach other positions, and that's a problem. That's why when minority coaches get fired, like they did in mass this year, there aren't enough candidates really in the pipeline at those positions that ownership is looking for. And look, I'm one of those who says this. Look, if you suck, you suck. If you're black, you're white, it doesn't matter to me. And I'll call it out both ways. So the guys who got fired, who are minorities, you deserve to get fired. Todd didn't get the job done. Marvin didn't get the job done. Hugh didn't get the job done. Steve Wilkes, that's a little bit debatable. But if you don't get the job done, then you're out. I don't care. And I'll hammer you just the same as I would any other coach. But there aren't enough people in the pipeline being groomed at the position groups that people look for, and you can't deny it. And anybody who tells you otherwise, you might want to look at them a little bit sideways because they're not being honest and they're being disingenuous. And somehow they got to get that corrected.
Louis Riddick, always appreciate you, brother. Enjoy the weekend of football games. We'll talk next week.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Louis Riddick, NFL Insider, ESPN NFL Front Office Insider, right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News, 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. By the way, you know what never goes out of style? Surprising a special friend or loved one with 24 multicolored roses to $29.99 from 1-800-Flowers.com. To order, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. Back with your calls and more to close out hour number 1 in a minute. You're listening live to Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News.
Craving even more of Stephen A.?
Him of all people.
For around-the-clock access to the man?
I'm Stephen A.
You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Stephen A. Smith and on Facebook at Stephen A.
The Arizona Cardinals with a K, y'all, by the way, not a C now. They put the K as in the Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals with a K because it's Kingsbury country now. Decide to troll me about Hunter Henry and all of that other stuff. You got to be kidding me. Do you have any idea who you messing with? Bring it. I can't wait. Y'all pathetic selves. 3-13, didn't give Wilkes much talent to work with, used him as a scapegoat, firing him after 1 year, and then you didn't even have the decency to go out and hire somebody with a better resume. Now, having said all of that, my apologies to Mr. Kingsbury. because it's not his fault. I'm sure he works hard. I'm sure he knows football. I'm sure he knows a thing or two about quarterbacks, having worked with Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, and all of these guys. I understand. And I wish him nothing but the best. I don't have to do that to him personally because your personal life seems to look wonderful. But the other side to all of this is that, in conference play under Cliff Kingsbury, look at it, 19-35, really? Really? 19-35? Giving up 39 points a game? Nearly 500 yards a game in conference play? And a turnover differential of minus 30? I'm going to repeat that. Leave that up on the damn screen. You got an overall 35-40 record. In conference play, you're 16 games under 500. You gave up nearly 40 points a game, nearly 500 yards per game, and you were a minus 30 in turnover differential. This is the new head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. And you got the nerve to preoccupy yourself with coming at me on Twitter? You should be drug tested right now. Right now.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed.
Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. We're coming to you live from above the Heineken River Deck at Pier 17. Plus, get triple action protection for optimal engine performance with Shell V-Power Nitro plus premium gasoline. Let's get to the phones real quick before I get on out of here. David, you're live with Stephen A. What's up, David?
Aloha, Stephen A. from beautiful Maui, Hawaii. How are you, sir?
I'm all right. Go ahead real quick. We're running out of time. Go ahead.
Hey, real quick for you. So my observation for this minority issue with the NFL and offense, I think what it is it feels like the majority of the minorities, especially the African Americans, have been pushed towards the defensive side of the ball, and they haven't really been given an opportunity on the offensive side. I don't know how you change that. One thing I do think about is how many African American quarterbacks that have been in the league and been successful and never really did anything after that. They did, pursue their career coaching and whatnot. And I think that has an issue as well.
Could be a point. Appreciate the call, buddy. Thank you so much. By the way, Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City, number one offense in yards, number one offense in points, number 3 passing attack. Doesn't call plays, but he works with Patrick Mahomes, who's about to win league MVP. And somehow, some way, he can't get a job because Zach Taylor, the quarterback coach for Jared Goff in L.A., is going to end up landing the job in Cincinnati. You just can't make it up. You just can't make it up. Listen, y'all, I got to get out of here a bit prematurely. I got to get out of here earlier than usual because I got to catch a flight to L.A. But my buddy Will Cain is going to fill in for me for hour number 2 of the Stephen A. Smith Show. I appreciate y'all. I want y'all to enjoy playoff weekend. I got the Rams winning. I got the Saints winning. I got the Chargers winning. And I got the Colts winning. The Chiefs winning, even though I know the Colts and the Cowboys could pull it off. But I'm still going with the Chiefs and the Rams. I'll holler at y'all on Monday. Till then, peace and love, everybody. Later.
From coast to coast, the Stephen A. Smith Show starts right now.
It's the best football weekend, the best professional football weekend of the year. It's the divisional round of the NFL playoffs, and that means while you and I get to enjoy, you and I get to sit back and have some fun, the pressure mounts for those young men, those old men, those grizzled vets, and those young rookies across the league. But who's the pressure on the most? Because I've got one quarterback out there where the sun sets. We're all about to judge. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, SiriusXM Channel 80, and on ESPN News. You can look around, and you can decide who has the most pressure. And some would say, well, it's you, Will. It's Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. Smith today as he heads off to Los Angeles. I'm going to bring you the next hour of this radio show, coast to coast, across the nation. Some 200-odd radio stations, as I hear Stephen A. say it, leading you right in to the Will Cain Show from 3 to 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio. If you're familiar with this voice, you may have heard it on the radio, or you may have seen it. Battling with Stephen A. on First Take from time to time, mornings, on your television dials. It's the one voice that inspires fear in Stephen A. The one voice that inspires hope in you. It's the one voice that's telling you that when there is pressure this weekend in the NFL playoffs, the pressure is on Jared Goff. If you made a list about who this weekend is going to come down hardest on, who this weekend has the potential to judge, I think any list that includes coaches, includes vets, includes rookies, includes the whole league, would probably start and end with Andy Reid. Andy Reid's long and littered past of playoff mishaps, playoff sadness, playoff destruction, choked leads, Colts, Titans. Andy Reid is the top of the pressure list. But in our marquee matchup of the weekend, if I don't say so myself, in the biggest game in the NFL, if I don't say so myself, in Cowboys-Rams, we find the player with the most pressure. And I was asked that this morning on First Take. I was asked, if you're looking at that matchup, who has more pressure on them? Is it Boy Genius? Is it the coaching model that everybody's chasing in the NFL? Is it Sean McVay, or is it Jared Goff? That was asked of Max, myself, and Stephen A. Here's what your man Stephen A. Smith had to say. Listen.
It's Sean McVay. He has become the standard upon which everybody, looks towards to bring in a new coach. So to go into a second consecutive year, all right, in the playoffs, divisional playoff game, home field advantage with the Dallas Cowboys coming in, and back-to-back years, you have a decent regular season, if not a damn good regular season, but you lose without winning a playoff game, that is a problem.
Boy, I'll tell you, after the hype, after the Boy Genius talk, after the coaching model that everybody's chased, whether or not it's Adam Gase for Sam Darnold or Cliff Kingsbury for Josh Rosen, or Freddie Kitchens for Baker Mayfield, the fact that everybody in the league, every owner wants to find their Sean McVay for their Jared Goff, you're damn right this thing goes to 0-2 in the playoffs, one and done 2 years in a row, and you got those big circle eye emojis online. You're damn right we're going to go, what is up? This is what we've all been trying to copy. This is what we've all been trying to hype up. But as much as that 0-2 prospect has the potential to put pressure on Sean McVay, the pressure is on Jared Goff because he's the one that we hold questions about. He's the one that has to answer exactly who is Jared Goff. You see, if Sean McVay loses, the truth is that puts pressure on Woody Johnson, owner of the New York Jets. That puts pressure on Steve Keim, GM of the Arizona Cardinals. That puts pressure on Jimmy Haslam and John Dorsey up in Cleveland. That puts pressure on all the guys chasing the Sean McVay mold. That puts pressure on all the guys saying that's the answer to our future, because then that would induce questions about exactly what this model, even a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox of this model, actually produces in terms of playoff victories. But again, that's pressure on the people trying to find their Sean McVay, not on Sean McVay. Yeah, he's been hyped up. Yeah, he's the next best thing. But I think we know the answer to the question, who is Sean McVay? He's one of the best coaches in the NFL. He solidified that. The turnaround for the team, and more importantly, the turnaround for Jared Goff from his Jeff Fisher year to his Sean McVay years, I think has shown us exactly who Sean McVay is. That doesn't put any pressure on him this weekend. We've answered that question. But Jared Goff, now that's a whole different thing. Jared Goff hasn't yet answered the question of who he is. Jared Goff had an outstanding first 11 games of this season. He was third in the league in passer rating. He was third, fourth, trailing right behind the big names in MVP talk, behind Pat Mahomes, behind Drew Brees. But as the season went on, some rough games against the Bears, the Lions, the Eagles, we began to go, whoa, that Jared Goff is not unlike the Jared Goff we saw during the Jeff Fisher days. That's the Jared Goff that turns the ball over. That's the Jared Goff that had 12 turnovers in the month of December. 6 interceptions, 6 fumbles. That's the Jared Goff that we have to answer questions about. And the questions are this. Can he, A, perform under pressure? Is he, B, a system quarterback? I mean, think about it. Jared Goff's got money on the line. Jared Goff's got branding on the line. Jared Goff's got momentum on the line. He can't be the quarterback we saw over the last month. He can't be somebody that's called a system quarterback. He can't be somebody that Los Angeles begins to wonder, well, we do have the genius on the sidelines. Can't he do this with anybody? Or at least somebody who doesn't cost $100 million as Jared Goff approaches his contract year? No. The pressure's not on McVay. The pressure is on Jared Goff. Now, I'll tell you, there is still criticism out there of Sean McVay. I mean, Max Kellerman and Louis Riddick got into this. There is some thought process out there that McVay hasn't adapted. He hasn't made the changes. He's stuck with what was going with him. And when it stopped, he didn't alter. Listen.
McVay seemed mid-late in the season unable to adjust to the Gurley injury. Whitworth was down for a couple games. But I believe McVay will adjust.
There's only, you know what, I'll tell you what, the word adjust is interesting because let me just tell you this, Max. There's only so many things you can do when your offensive line is losing the line of scrimmage. What adjustments you're going to make? You're going to screen them all game long? You're going to quick pass them all game long? Maybe you will. But what you're doing is you're playing into their hand because, again, they're still making you one-dimensional.
Has Sean McVay adjusted? Well, not unlike dominating teams throughout history, Sean McVay does what works. The play action works for the Los Angeles Rams. Todd Gurley works for the Los Angeles Rams. Sean McVay's going to do what works. And they should. Win or lose, you dance with who brung you. That's what we said about the Seahawks, and rightfully so when they lost to the Cowboys. The Seahawks, yeah, they ran it on first. Yeah, they ran it on second. And yeah, they said Russ do something special on third. But that's what got them where they were. And you dance with who brung you. You don't change at the last minute. The Rams will be who they've been. But which Jared Goff will he be? That's the question we get to answer this weekend. And that puts pressure on the young quarterback in L.A. Now, which way we go in this game? Who am I taking? I'm going to unveil that for you over the next 4 hours. But your normal host in this slot, your man, my man, our man, Stephen A. Smith, he did something that I think is at the highest level here. Top of the game stuff. Stephen A. made a pick, and I need your help in telling me exactly which way Stephen A.'s going in Cowboys-Rams. Listen and see if we can figure it out.
I give the Dallas Cowboys a 75% chance of winning this game.
75%?
75%.
You cannot do that.
Are you ready for this? Stay with me. Watch me now. Watch. The Dallas Cowboys, to me, should win this game. But they won't. They won't. They should win. But they won't. They won't.
So you're leaning more to the 25% chance that they blow.
Damn right. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying.
He says I'm confusing.
I mean, Max, you got a point. For once, Max, you got a point. Stephen A. is confusing. Stephen A. does accuse Max of being on both sides of an issue, imperceptibly incapable of being pinned down. Stephen A., I know you're listening to your car. I know you're headed to the airport. I know you're taking the Rams, but I don't understand this hedge. I don't understand 75% chance the Cowboys win, but I'm in the 25%. I don't know if it's like a reverse psychology thing, which does make me very uncomfortable. I do not like you talking up the Cowboys. I don't know what exactly 75% chance the Cowboys win, but I'm in the 25% means. I don't know what you're doing. Is that voodoo? Is that jinx? I don't know exactly what that means. All I know is it makes me nervous. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. Smith. We should be joined here in just a moment by radio host in New York of Humpty and Canty, longtime New York Giant, one-time Dallas Cowboy Chris Canty. He's going to tell me exactly if he can Sherlock Holmes, that prediction from Stephen A. Put me behind some of the matchups. In just a moment here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. I'll tell you this. One guy that wasn't so cryptic, one guy that wasn't hedging, one guy that wasn't splitting the baby is former Browns offensive tackle Joe Thomas, who went on Golic and Wingo this morning, and he said something that is unequivocal. Listen to what Joe Thomas said about this game.
I really think the Rams are going to smoke the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys, they've run the football. They've played good defense. That can get you into the playoffs. When you're hot, that can make you run in the playoffs. But if they can't throw the football, to me, they're going to have a hard time keeping up with the Rams. I know they're going to try to keep the possessions down. They're going to try to make it old school style football. But the Rams are going to score points. They're going to get the lead on the Cowboys. And I just don't have confidence that the Cowboys have enough offensive firepower outside of Zeke Elliott to be able to hang with the Rams. I mean, if the Rams score 2 touchdowns in the first half, I don't know if the Cowboys can even score 2 touchdowns.
That's former Browns offensive tackle Joe Thomas on Golic and Wingo this morning. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, making it easy to bundle your home and car insurance. I'll tell you this. If Jared Goff has the most pressure for the Rams, here's where the pressure lies with the Cowboys. It lies on 2 very good, very young players on the defensive side of the ball. The pressure lies with linebackers Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch. The Rams like to run play action. They like to run Todd Gurley on the outside zone. That commits linebackers, stretching them out sideline to sideline while Jared Goff pulls the ball back and hits passes behind those linebackers down the middle of the field. It's going to be incumbent on those young linebackers to make the right decision quickly. Is it run? Is it pass? It's going to be incumbent on those young linebackers to make sure they're not beat over and over down the middle with passes throughout that game. If the pressure is on Jared Goff on the Rams side of the ball, the pressure is on those linebackers on the Dallas side of the ball. Now, the game plan is obvious for the Cowboys. It's going to be run Ezekiel Elliott, dominate time of possession, and try to keep the ball out of that explosive Rams offense's hands. It's not going to be as Joe Thomas suggested. It's not going to be 14 points right off the bat. If it is, he's right. That's all the makings of a Rams win. But if the Cowboys do what they've done to most opponents, it's going to be keep opponents very low scoring, very low yardage in the first quarter. Keep that game under control. And as that domino continues to click down, click, 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 click from first quarter to second quarter to third quarter, what you end up with is a low-scoring affair, a game that plays into the Cowboys' hands, a game that in the end comes down to one possession. And as that final domino falls, it looks like this. Can Dak Prescott make another game-winning play? 14 game-winning drives over his career. The answer has resoundingly been yes up to this point. Can Dak Prescott do it one more time? That will be the pressure. That will be the formula for the Cowboys. Jared Goff on the Rams side. Young linebackers on the Cowboys side. And then ultimately, Dak Prescott's hand. I'm joined now by ESPN New York's 98.7 and former Cowboy and Giants defensive lineman, host for that radio station in New York, Chris Canty, who's on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. What's up, Chris?
Nothing much, brother. How you feeling about the game tomorrow night?
Those that don't know me, and Chris does, as I'm introducing myself to Stephen A. Smith's audience across this land, and this radio station is proudly carried both in New York and L.A. Those that don't know me might have figured out I'm a little bit of a Cowboys fan. Chris, I'm feeling good. I actually am feeling good. Football's matchups. I like this matchup.
Absolutely, and styles make fights, and I think that the Dallas Cowboys style presents some challenges for the Los Angeles Rams. If you look at what the Cowboys have been doing the last few games, they've been running the offense through Zeke. And you saw it last weekend in the wild card game. I mean, Zeke had 123 yards from scrimmage at halftime. So Zeke is going to get that type of workload, and you know that the Los Angeles Rams defensive front struggles to stop their run. They're giving up 5.1 a clip. Like, I think that that's a good formula for the Dallas Cowboys to continue with going into this game in the divisional round.
Vivid Seats has it, Chris, that 30% of the tickets in L.A. have been sold to Cowboys fans. I was talking to former Ohio State linebacker, I think a teammate of yours for a while, Bobby Carpenter, and he was saying he thinks they count that, though, by where the tickets bought, location. It doesn't really account for what jersey they wear. And there's a lot of L.A. residents who are Cowboys fans. Jerry Jones has been investing in that for years. So that might be a 50-50 crowd split. Do you think that's important?
Well, I think it's important from the standpoint that there won't be the home field advantage that you would typically get in a playoff environment for that home team. So, I mean, I look at the Rams and I'm saying there's probably going to be just as many Cowboys fans there. And keep in mind the Cowboys do have training camp in Southern California out in Thousand Oaks. So, I mean, I anticipate that being a Cowboys-friendly crowd. And so the game is ultimately going to be determined by who's on the field. That's what it's going to come down to. So everybody wants to make a big deal about the complexion of the crowd. I'm more interested in the complexion of the game and how it unfolds, because I think there's a specific path for the Dallas Cowboys. That's getting a lead and maintaining a lead. I don't think this Dallas Cowboys offense is built to come from behind, and so I think that it's important that they get out in front of the Rams and force the Rams to try to play catch-up.
ESPN New York, 98.7 host Chris Canty here on the Stephen A. Smith Show with Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. Let's go around the league. Let's not just focus on this one game. Let's hit the other three, Chris. I want to ask you, who do you have more faith in, Andrew Luck or Patrick Mahomes in Colts-Chiefs early Saturday? But I kind of feel like the appropriate question is, do you have faith in Andy Reid in the playoffs?
Well, I have faith in Andy Reid, and I know he doesn't have the best track record in the postseason, but Andy Reid's a good football coach. And so I do trust that he's going to put his players in position. It's just a matter of those guys being able to execute. And, of course, for Pat Mahomes, this is his first rodeo. He doesn't have any postseason experience. So if you're asking me which quarterback do I trust the most, it's probably going to have to be Andrew Luck. This is his 8th playoff game. This is his 4th postseason overall. So I trust Andrew Luck, and especially the way that this Colts offensive line has been protecting him. I mean, he was the least sacked quarterback in the regular season. He only got sacked 18 times. And the fact that they do have balance on the offensive side of the ball, I think it bodes well for them. I think this Kansas City Chiefs defense is going to have a tough time stopping this Colts offense. And this Colts team overall is the more physical of the two teams, if you ask my opinion. So I think physicality and experience, those are two huge factors when it comes to postseason success. And you have to feel good about what the Colts are bringing in the Arrowhead on Saturday.
Hey, Canty, is it fair to say that matchup, Colts-Chiefs, is a little bit like Cowboys-Rams in that the goal of the Colts, and I think they can execute this, is to dominate with their offensive line, run the ball on a Chiefs defense that cannot stop the run, and reduce time of possession for an explosive offense in Patrick Mahomes. In fact, I think the Cowboys' formula for the Rams is probably very similar to the Colts' formula for the Chiefs.
Well, I think the formulas are very similar, but here's the one little caveat that I would say, the one difference between the two. If the Colts get behind in this game, it's not like the Colts can't throw the ball and play catch-up with Andrew Luck. They can. And the Chiefs have shown at home that they're susceptible to a team coming from behind and being able to get a win. You go back to that Thursday night game they had against the Chargers. They had a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter, and look what happened. And that's because the Kansas City Chiefs couldn't line up and go into their 4-minute offense and sustain drives at the end of the game. You have to be able to run the football, especially late in postseason games when the opposing team knows you're going to run the football. You have to be able to impose your will. And the Kansas City Chiefs haven't shown that they can do that without Kareem Hunt. So that would be the one thing that would concern me, even if Kansas City gets out in front of the Colts. It's not like the Colts can't come from behind. That offense has been very explosive, and you're right. That offense, they're actually leaning on the running game as well. The last 4 games, they've averaged 146 yards rushing. So, I mean, this is a team, Frank Reich, this offense, they want to stay with the running game. But it's not like we don't trust Andrew Luck to be able to throw his team back in the game. I would say that would be the only difference between the two road teams this weekend on Saturday.
I see that. Okay, so listen, I don't believe in football gods. I don't believe in magical forces on the football field. I don't actually even invest very much, Canty, in things like weather, but I'm going to give you 2 things. And by the way, I consider these radio studios, both here on my show and the Stephen A. Smith Show, sort of like a chapel, a church of authenticity. Be real. So I'm going to be real with everyone listening right now. My preseason Super Bowl prediction was Cowboys-Chargers. That means I want that to come true. So when I tell you I'm taking the Chargers this weekend, I obviously have a little bit of an interest in that outcome occurring. But here's the thing. Back to this football gods thing, okay? And the weather. Phillip Rivers is 0-7 against Brady. That scares me, Canty. And you know what else scares me? You're in New York. I'm in New York. I walked to work today, and it was cold, man. Really cold. Like 20s, low 20s cold. And I said to myself, the Chargers are flying across the country to come play up in Massachusetts and this kind of stuff, and I'm worried about my Chargers prediction.
And not only that, this will be the second week that they're flying west to east. And you're right, it's brick outside. It's real cold. But that's what happens in the Northeast in January. And so you're going to have to deal with that. And unfortunately for the Chargers, I mean, a cold player isn't a fast player, and that's an offense that wants to be more up-tempo. So I think that is going to be a little bit of a struggle. And you got to think that Bill Belichick will have some type of plan in terms of how his offense is going to counteract some of the things that the Chargers have shown of late defensively. So I look at this and I say it's hard to bet against Bill Belichick and Tom Brady at home in the postseason, especially when they've had the bye week. So I like the New England Patriots, and I know that their best chance to be able to win this game is to shorten the game by being able to run the football. I mean, if you look at all their losses this season, they have a couple of things in common. Number one, they were all on the road. But number two, those games, that offense failed to rush for 100 yards. So, I mean, their formula is very similar to what we think the Dallas Cowboys and what we think the Indianapolis Colts are going to have to do. I think they have to shorten this game and limit the possessions for Phillip Rivers and that Chargers offense because Bill Belichick knows he has to protect his defense. It's not the most talented defensive group for the Patriots. So I think their best defense is being able to have an offense that can sustain drives, and I think a lot of that will be used by the running backs, by Sony Michel in the run game, but also James White in the short passing game.
All right, one last question for former Cowboy and Giants defensive lineman Chris Canty, who's on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. By the way, Chris is the co-host of Humpty, Canty, and Rothenberg on ESPN New York 98.7. I'm not going to ask you about Saints-Eagles unless you have a massively surprising prediction for me on that. But I do want to move forward with this conversation. Chris, it seems to me if you ever quit on your team, I'm uninterested in you. Okay, I don't care how much money you make. I don't care what kind of stats you put up in the box score. If you don't show up the week of a game that matters to practice and meetings like Antonio Brown, I'm uninterested in you being on my team. The cost benefit just isn't there. You played in the league. Can you count on a guy? Do you want a guy who's done that?
Well, I think it all depends on the circumstances, and we all know that there are a lot of moving parts with what was going on in Pittsburgh, and the relationship between Big Ben and Antonio Brown wasn't the best. So, I mean, you would need insight into that particular situation to make an informed judgment on Antonio Brown and his actions. But I'll say this, I'm not going to quit on talent. Antonio Brown is arguably one of the best receivers in our game. He has been statistically the best receiver in the National Football League since 2013. So, I mean, there are going to be a lot of teams that are interested in him. And players around the NFL, guess what? They understand that having Antonio Brown on their team from a talent standpoint gives you a better chance to win. And if you win, a high tide raises all boats. So if you win, that gives you more job security as a player. So I just look at this situation and say it's unfortunate that it seems like it's ending this way for AB in Pittsburgh, but he'll find some place to land. I'm sure there'll be a lot of teams that are interested in trying to trade for him.
To hell with all that, Canty. I have a problem with it. I'll tell you what, I don't have a problem with you. I appreciate you jumping on with me, filling in for Stephen A. I always love talking to you, Chris.
All right, thanks for having me on, brother.
Take care, man. That's Chris Canty of ESPN New York, former Giants defensive lineman. Not to hell with all that. Nah, I don't want Antonio Brown. Not worth it. Not worth the money, not worth the trade, not worth the problems. I'm going to lay out exactly for you why no team should be willing to pay the price for Antonio Brown. Next on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Gentlemen, stop lounging around. Be active. Take your girl out. Go to a game or a concert. Get tickets or something. Plus, the playoffs are upon us, and the time is now to jump on those tickets. For all your ticket leads, look no further than Vivid Seats, the official ticket partner of ESPN. Go to vividseats.com, enter promo code ESPN to get 10% off your first order. Get out. Go have an experience, fellas. Get to the game. And use what I use, Vivid Seats. You don't want Antonio Brown. Next on the Stephen A. Smith Show.
Steelers owner Art Ernie II told the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that it's hard to envision Antonio Brown on the team when training camp begins in July.
They're going to trade him if they can.
You just wonder, when is the final straw?
This is the...
Now, lo and behold, you listen to Adam Gates. It's Adam Gaze, I'm sorry. And you know what he's saying, right? What you looking at me for? It's about injuries. It's about injuries. That's all it's about. It's about injuries. That's what he's saying. Frank Gore got injured. Albert Wilson got injured. Hakeem Grant got injured. Josh Sinton got injured. A.J. Derby got injured. I get it. Ryan Tannehill wasn't healthy the entire season. I get it. Adam Gase even made a case for himself, pointing out how they were 3-0 until the injuries happened. Last time I checked, injuries weren't part of football. Last time I checked, it wasn't an excuse for anybody else. So I don't want to come across, and I want to be careful here, because I'm not trying to come across by saying Adam Gase can't coach. Adam Gase doesn't deserve a job. I'm trying to say it's New York. It's the Jets. New Yorkers have been starving for something to be hopeful about and enthused about for quite some time. When Rex Ryan first arrived on the scene, it was back-to-back AFC Championship games. When Bill Parcells arrived on the scene, it was a trip to the AFC Championship game. Outside of that, Herm Edwards took you to the playoffs a couple of times. But you knew they weren't going to do anything. If Vernie Testaverde doesn't go down, forcing my man Keyshawn Johnson to slam his hands on a podium, damn it, after telling the world he wanted the damn ball because he was looking forward to Testaverde getting him the ball, and then suddenly he gets hurt and the season's a wash, and Super Bowl aspirations go down the drain. I mean, last time I checked, injuries are always a part of it. So what you do is you have a guy here that you have now brought in who has said, look, if it wasn't for injuries, I'd have been fine. The problem is injuries happen every week in the NFL. So if that's what he's saying, what hope is there? That the Jets go get on the field and suddenly they ain't gonna have any injuries? This is the reason that New York Jets fans should be excited. Really? Really? I mean, this is unbelievable.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed.
If I can't count you to show up, if I'm not even sure you're going to be there for me, nah, you're not worth it. Not even close to worth it. If you're not somebody that I can count on to be there when it matters most, like, I don't know, the last game of the season with playoff implications, potential playoff berth on the line, and I can't count on you to be there, I don't care how much talent you have. I don't care how many consecutive seasons of 1,250 receiving yards you have. I don't care what you do to a box score. Are you going to do it for me? Are you going to do it this weekend? Antonio Brown's not worth it. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, SiriusXM Channel 80, and on ESPN News. It's Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. Smith today. You can normally get me 3 to 6 Eastern Time on ESPN Radio. You can catch me hanging out with Stephen A., Max, and Molly on First Take. But I'll be taking you here up to the top of the hour in my show here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. By the way, tune in tomorrow for college basketball action as Ohio State battles Iowa, presented by Peloton. Coverage begins at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Art Rooney II, owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, told the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that he cannot envision Antonio Brown, wide receiver, probably, at least in his production on the field, the best wide receiver in the league, that he cannot envision Antonio Brown coming back to the team. Not after what he did going into week 17 of the season, when Antonio Brown did not show up for meetings, did not return calls, did not show up to practice, and didn't report until game day, at which point Mike Tomlin said, thanks but no thanks. We can't use your services on this game that could potentially launch us into the playoffs. Now, Baker Mayfield and the Browns did not take down the Baltimore Ravens, providing the Steelers the opportunity to win their way into the playoffs. But Antonio Brown didn't know that when he started skipping obligations. He didn't know that when he let his entire team down. Antonio Brown's response to Art Rooney has been, first, to unfollow the Steelers on Twitter, and second, post a picture of himself and Art Rooney shaking hands with the tag, something like business is booming, good business, #booming, best business, #booming. I don't know because I couldn't make sense of it. All I know is I think it was a shot. That's what I'm pretty sure of. It looks like Antonio Brown's out of Pittsburgh. And I'm here to tell you that if you're the San Francisco 49ers, the Detroit Lions, or whoever is in need of a wide receiver, you better think twice before you send any kind of valuable asset to Pittsburgh for Antonio Brown, before you take on a massive contractual obligation and send draft picks out to bring in a wide receiver that, yes, is incredibly talented. Yes, is I think the best wide receiver in the league. But yes, a wide receiver that you flat out can't count on. Make your T-chart. I talk about this all the time, like a balancing act, like a balance sheet, pluses and minuses, debits and credits. Make your T-chart. If you're driving, you can't do it. If you're at work, just draw one. On one side, I swear, put everything. 1,250 yards receiving, 6+ seasons. Put best receiver in the league. I don't know. Go find his best box score of 2017. Put that over there. I want you to load it up on the pluses. I want you to give Brown everything. As Chris Canty, radio host in ESPN New York and former Giants defensive lineman, just told me, talent usually wins out, but this isn't the NBA. I understand that maxim, and I buy that maxim in the NBA. You got to take big gambles, big risks for talent. This is the NFL, and the point of that is when you have to get 50, 60 men in line on the same page, adhering to a message. If somebody cuts a corner in the NFL, it's not just that guy that gets off. It's not just that guy that subverts the rule. It's not just that guy who doesn't get in the extra work. It's everybody who looks over and goes, oh, that's the way it is. Oh, I see. You don't have to show. Oh, I see. Coach is a hypocrite. Oh, I see. Antonio doesn't have to, but I do. And I know that's the way it works. I get it. I know that's how everything works. I know when Jimmy Johnson said, if Emmitt Smith falls asleep in a meeting, he's on the team. If the 53rd guy on the roster falls asleep, he's off the team. I get all that. And I'm not lamenting the fact that life isn't fair. But I am telling you this. You'll have an organization that's not on the same page that believes their leader's a hypocrite, not unlike what's happened with the Steelers over the last several years. Has that been a good locker room? Has that been a team on the same page? No. And I'm showing you one of the reasons why. So you want Antonio Brown, you load up that plus side, that credit side, that T-chart side with all you want, because on the other side, you have to put down may not show. And if that's on the other side and may not show, it's a heavier weight than everything on the other side in football. Let's hit the phone lines. Let's hit our man Carlton in Tampa. Carlton, you're on the Stephen A. Smith Show. You haven't been on the Will Cain Show in a while, but here you are on the Stephen A. Smith Show.
I was calling in today to implore you to do an intervention on Stephen A. for his Antonio Brown take, which to me is the height of lunacy. Stephen A. talked about how he always gives 100%, and nobody prepares more for a game when he just doesn't show up for days on end and shows up on Saturday before a game that, might get you into the playoffs and thinks he's going to play. Other than that, he's really, dependable and puts in 100% effort. But I think you ought to try to get a company-wide discount on drug testing there, because if you think that anybody on the Rams or on the Cowboys, is under more pressure this weekend than Andy Reid for coaching and Phillip Rivers for quarterbacking, well, you need to be drug tested, my friend. Andy Reid's been a coach in the NFL for 20 years, 20 seasons. He's been to the playoffs 13 times. He made the Super Bowl once and lost, okay? And he's lost in disastrous fashion multiple times in the playoffs. And Phillip Rivers has been a starting quarterback for 13 years in the NFL, never got to the big dance, faced Tom Brady in the playoffs twice. Both times Brady threw 3 interceptions in the game, and he still
Okay, hold on now, Carlton. Hold on. Now, generally, Carlton, I think you're a pretty clear thinker, and you're a clear thinker today, but there's a reason you're just a notch below a guy like me or Stephen A. on the debate chart, and that's because it has to do with listening. Now, what did I say at the top of this show? I said, yes, Andy Reid has the most pressure on him, but if you go to players, then I put it on Goff. And yeah, I think Goff has more pressure on him than Rivers.
I thought you said Andy Reid may be the coach with the most pressure. It's not even close. It's Andy Reid and Phillip Rivers. I mean, Goff's only been in the league a couple years. If he doesn't succeed this year, he's got plenty more years ahead of him. So, but if Phillip Rivers doesn't get it done against Tom Brady this this Sunday with what most people would argue is the better team, better talent on his team, well, then he may never get it done. And Brewski was on yesterday, was on First Take talking about how the Chargers need to beat them, and he was way off base. I think he's still working for Belichick, trying to disabuse people of how to beat the New England Patriots. I'm going to tell you what they need to do to beat the New England Patriots. They got to stop the backs out of the backfield from catching balls and getting yards after the catch. James White has 667 yards after the catch. The typical pass thrown to James White is no more than 1 yard down the field, and yet he scrambles for 7 or 8 yards afterwards and gets first down.
I got you.
And Burkhead can do that too. And the Chargers, with their 7 defensive back setting, should be fast enough to catch these guys. But
with
that's
a guy,
what they got to do.
I got you, Carlton.
Tom Brady beat you down the field.
I got you. With a guy like Derwin James, the Chargers should be able to do it. And that's the key with the Chargers. Thanks for the call, Carlton. Always love talking to you. With a guy like Derwin James, the Chargers should be able to stop the Patriots. The Chargers should a lot of years. Will they? I'll tell you what. I'll talk to the guy that Carlton just brought up, Teddy Bruschi, formerly of the New England Patriots, 1 hour from now on the Will Cain Show. But for now, this is the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio, and I want to play a game with you. I want to ask you this. With various outcomes for the potential games this weekend, various potential outcomes for the games, we should ask ourselves, what's the headline? What are we going to be talking about? What's the story on Monday? Because you can anticipate what they'll be. And that might tell us which way these games go. Play a little game of what's the headline on Monday, right after this on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Need game tickets? Find your seats at Vivid Seats.
The Arizona Cardinals with a K, y'all, by the way, not a C now. They put the K as in the Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals with a K because it's Kingsbury country now. Decide to troll me about Hunter Henry and all of that other stuff. You got to be kidding me. Do you have any idea who you messing with? Bring it. I can't wait. Y'all pathetic selves. 3-13, didn't give Wilkes much talent to work with, used him as a scapegoat, firing him after 1 year, and then you didn't even have the decency to go out and hire somebody with a better resume. Now, having said all of that, my apologies to Mr. Kingsbury, because it's not his fault. I'm sure he works hard. I'm sure he knows football. I'm sure he knows a thing or two about quarterbacks, having worked with Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, and all of these guys. I understand. And I wish him nothing but the best. I don't have to do that to him personally because your personal life seems to look wonderful. But the other side to all of this is that, in conference play under Cliff Kingsbury, look at it, 19-35, really? Really? 19-35? Giving up 39 points a game, nearly 500 yards a game in conference play, and a turnover differential of minus 30? I'm going to repeat that. Leave that up on the damn screen. You got an overall 35-40 record. In conference play, you're 16 games under 500. You gave up nearly 40 points a game, nearly 500 yards per game, and you were a minus 30 in turnover differential. This is the new head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. And you got the nerve to preoccupy yourself with coming at me on Twitter? You should be drug tested right now. Right now.
ESPN app, SiriusXM Channel 80 on ESPN News. Will Cain filling in for Stephen A. in this last hour of the show, taking you up to the Will Cain Show, which you can normally get 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN Radio, SiriusXM Channel 80, and on ESPN News. You can also catch me on First Take, hanging out with Max, Molly, and Stephen A. most days of the week. This is a Football Friday, headed into the divisional round of the NFL playoffs, and on Monday, I think you can almost predict the storylines. I think you can almost taste what I'll be talking about on Monday, what you'll be talking about, what we'll be saying, what newspaper headlines will blare in 3-inch headlines. In fact, let's look at each one of these games. And I want you to ask yourself which one of these two stories are more likely. Can you actually hear the conversation taking place? Because if you can, I don't know. Maybe that tells us which way this game's going to go. Trust me, we're going to break down every one of these games. We have been already. Is it the Cowboys linebackers or Jared Goff rising to the occasion? Is it Ezekiel Elliott or Todd Gurley who dominates time of possession? Can the Colts and Patriots follow the same formula as, for example, the Cowboys of depriving high-powered offenses across from them and the Chargers and the Chiefs from lighting up the scoreboard? Can they play defense and run the ball? That's the great, in fact, drama of 2018, this season. If you want one theme for this season, it's this. Did Andy Reid and Sean McVay reinvent the NFL along with NFL officiating in half a season and make it so every team needs to score 35 to win? That's what every owner thinks right now. Or does defense and running the ball still have a shot? The Patriots, the Cowboys, the Colts are going to put that to the test this weekend. But let's play the game. Let's roll the dice on our fortune telling. Lay over the tarot cards, do the crystal ball, whatever it is you do when you fortune tell. Which one of these stories seems more likely? Let's do it with Chiefs-Colts. If the Colts lose, if the Chiefs win the game, it's a non-headline for the Colts. It's something like Colts can't keep up with Chiefs scoring. We're going to talk about Patrick Mahomes and all the points that Andy Reid and his offense put up, but we're not going to come down that hard on the Colts. We're going to talk about the Colts being a year too early. In fact, I don't think beyond the storyline, beyond the headlines, that it's going to send the Colts back to the bathroom looking in the mirror. It's not going to inspire introspection. The Colts are going to go, what do we do? What do we do? They know they're on path. They have the most cap room of anybody in the NFL, but I don't think they're going to have to spend it on, say, Le'Veon Bell. They got Marlon Mack. They're on pace. A Colts loss, it doesn't scream headlines. It doesn't send them to the therapist. But a Chiefs loss, that story screams Andy Reid does it again. Chiefs do it again. Blow the lead against the Titans a year ago. Blow the lead against the Colts 5 years ago. They're snake bit. Andy Reid's snake bit. I got to tell you something. Maybe I'm a sucker for what has been being so again, but I can almost hear that story on Monday. I can almost hear that storyline. How about Rams-Cowboys? If the Cowboys lose, it's going to go back on Jason Garrett and Dak Prescott almost inevitably. It's going to be said, are they average, both of them? Can they ever rise to the occasion and push a team into real winning in the NFL? But if Jared Goff and Sean McVay lose, that's going to call into crisis every coaching hiring over the past 2 weeks. That's going to call into crisis Jared Goff and who he is. The headline's going to scream, Jared Goff shrinks from the occasion. That one sounds like a conversation we're going to be having. I got to tell you something. That forecasting sounds accurate. Chiefs choke again. Goff shrinks from occasion. That's what it sounds like to me. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. This has been the Stephen A. Smith Show. Hang in, because I'm going to ask you, what's the better duo? Ezekiel Elliott and Dak Prescott, or Jared Goff and Todd Gurley? That's coming up straight ahead on the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio.
The new ESPN app, now with